You're a part, of course, of the Celtics' Big Three, KG, Ray Allen, and yourself. Fizz, you coached the Heat. You're the lead assistant on the bench with the Big Three with, of course, LeBron, Wade, and Bosh down in Miami. So I have to ask you guys, hearing all of that, including what James just said about adapting his play and changing and becoming a little bit more of a playmaker, what do you guys think the biggest challenge is, Paul, for how this Big Three is going to come together?
Well, James said it. I heard him say it a couple times, the sacrifice. He can't be the James Harden that he was in Houston. But my question is to the New Jersey Nets is the style of play.
Jersey?
I mean, the Brooklyn Nets.
Where you going, man?
Listen,
they were Brooklyn Nets when you were there, Paul.
We once said that we would never see a jump shooting team win a championship, then you had the Golden State Warriors.
Right.
And now you have three great one-on-one players. Is this the year that we have a one-on-one team style of play? I mean, that's who they are. I mean, am I going to ask James to cut back door? Am I going to ask him to spot up? Am I going to ask the same of Kyrie? So my question is, what style of play? Can they be the first one-on-one team, ISO team to win? We have yet to see, and I don't know what style of play that's going to be because you have to use these players to their strength. But the sacrifice, that's going to be the biggest things in James is going to have to do in order for this team to succeed.
Yeah, and that's the word I kept hearing, sacrifice. And Spo used to have a great saying, sacrifice is easy until it's you. And so we're going to see if these guys are willing to sacrifice. And what does that look like? What does that mean? That means that time of possession with the ball as an individual. You got to make decisions quicker now because you got two other stars sitting on the weak side. So you got to make those decisions quicker. Defensively, when you're on defense, are you taking pride in being a top-level defensive team, or is it all about scoring and when you have the basketball? Those are the places that I want to see if those guys are willing to make the sacrifices. And then finally, the off-the-court distractions. Can we get that behind us now and get to where y'all just playing basketball and showing what you can really do as a team?
Well, you guys, we were talking right before the show that you guys, when you came together as a Big Three in Boston, Paul, the fit was very natural, just between the position Ray played, the way you played, the way KG played. You were saying before the show the fit in Miami was not as just slot. You guys really pioneered that positionless basketball in terms of making it just a regular part of the equation. How did you figure that out as a coaching staff?
Pain, losing to Dallas, really suffering and having to go through that because Dwayne and LeBron were so dynamic with the similar type of basketball game where they needed that ball in their hands a lot. And ultimately, it did come down to us adapting as a coaching staff, but also when we talk about sacrifice. Paul was just saying it. We got after it defensively. That's one thing you can say. That team got after it defensively. And both of those guys, when they didn't have the ball, they made a conscious effort to move without it.
Yeah, that's my biggest question.
Yeah.
I mean, offense is not going to be a problem.
Defending.
Can they be a top 5 defensive team? Because if not, I don't see them getting to the finals.
Well, you see this usage rate in clutch time. So these are all, by the way, all have a track record of being clutch performers. We threw it up here yesterday on the show. In the last 10 seasons, 8 guys have accumulated 1,000 points in the clutch. The Nets now have 3 of those 8. So they have guys who can come through in the clutch. The question, of course, is a little bit who takes the last shot. But I do think that stuff works itself out.
It does.
It's going to be some guys one night, some guys another night. In terms of defense, I completely agree. I mean, I remember so much, Fizz, that you guys had your first training camp once all those guys came together. Eric decided to hold it at a military base. And that you guys ran only defensive drills for the first few days, week?
It was at least 3 or 4 days that we just went straight defense. And it was to set a tone at a military base because we was getting ready for them. And you had to be so disciplined and sharp to beat that Boston team. They guarded the heck out of you. They moved the ball. They ran their stuff to precision. And they weren't going to beat themselves. So we knew this wasn't no guarantee that we was just going to come strolling out of the East. So we said the one thing we can all do is we can all defend. We'll work out the offensive stuff later. And ultimately, those habits we built in that first year led to the championships.
I do want to ask you one more thing from the presser and what we just heard from James. Remember, Boogie Cousins came out, I think it was yesterday, and said it was extremely disrespectful the way that he treated us while he was here or we were here. James was asked about that. And his comment was, I wasn't disrespectful to those guys. He said, look, I've been in Houston for a long time. They just got here. This was about something much bigger and broader. It really wasn't about them. And he also said that he did have regrets, only in that he said it wasn't in his character to do things that drew negative attention. But he said it did get me to Brooklyn. Paul, how do you see that whole situation? I certainly understand Boogie's side, but also James is right. What he did got him where he wanted to go. The system basically allowed for that.
Well, yeah, I understand both sides. I mean, because sometimes disrespect comes in all forms and fashion. It's not just what you say, it's your actions. And Boogie was saying that, like, look, you didn't come to training camp on time. And then we look at his last 5 games with the Rockets. That's not the James Harden we know.
No.
And so in saying that, it was his actions that garnered the disrespect. But on the other side, what James Harden was saying, he was like, you heard him say, I gave him everything.
Yep.
Right.
I gave him everything, and apparently his everything wasn't good enough to bring a championship to Houston. And that's all you can ask for from a player. So I understand his frustration as a veteran in this league, as an all-time player. He's made all the money, shoe contract. He's done everything you could do in the game of basketball. Now he just wants to win a championship, and it got frustrating for him.
Yeah.
Coach Steve Nash was asked about this also this morning, and I'm just read off my laptop here for y'all. He said, I think James carried that team for many years. He said gave them everything he had. So since he asked for a trade, he said, I think that, this is Steve Nash, he said, I think this was a very small sample size since he asked for the trade. And he said, it's fairly irrelevant if you're discussing James's overall character or whether he's going to be a problem or not. I have to think you'd agree with that, right?
I totally agree, and I think James Harden now really, he sees the trophy. And so you're going to get the best of James Harden right now. I really do believe that. And I think, you know, when you get into these tussles, you know, these squabbles, it's always going to be a little messy. But let's be real about it. At the end of the day, everybody won.
Yep.
Houston got a heck of a deal with the players they got, the picks that they got, the exceptions, all of that good stuff. And Brooklyn got a hell of a all-time player, like he talked about on both sides.
In any situation, do we expect a relationship breakup to be smooth all the time?
I can't remember one. I can't remember
I mean,
one.
you know, that's just the way it is.
It happens, but it is certainly unusual. And Paul, I would like to say that Brooklyn has now given away pretty much the same, you know, that just compared to your trade, what they gave away for you, maybe that wipes some of that slate clean as well. All right, guys, before we go, the NBA just announced 2 more Wizards games have had to be postponed. This is, of course, because of ongoing contact tracing within the team. They do not have the league-required 8 available players to proceed with scheduled games against the Cavaliers this Sunday and Monday, so we keep an eye on that. All right, guys, stick with us. Coming up, Miles Bridges throwing down a candidate for Dunk of the Year last night. Look at this back scratcher. Woo!
Hey.
We'll be going deep in that one. It's also time for our distant replay. This date, 2007, featuring an iconic shot from Gilbert Arenas. Producer Danny says,
just with my man Gil. Did his podcast.
Gilbert for the win.
Agent Zero. Oh, he was a sniper.
Man.
he was so good.
So good.